Okay. All right. Right on, man. We are live, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. Anybody who happens to pop on here. So this is a simulcast. This is Continue Freedom and Braver Than the Rest. I got my buddy Jeremy in the house,
Howdy, hi.
and we're gonna watch this. This I don't know what kind of show we're gonna get tonight, man, when it comes to this this debate. But I want to remind everybody: be sure that you go to Braver Than the Rest. That you go to Continue Freedom. If you're here watching this, make sure you go and hit us with a like, a subscribe, hit us with comments. And so as this thing goes along and as more people pop on, any of the comments, I'll try to get to those when we get to like commercial breaks and stuff like that. We might get to them along the way, you know, as we go, but we're only a few minutes out here right now. We're coming right up on it to the start of this thing. So once everybody starts walking out, we'll bring them on. So I don't know, man. I guess we'll see. What kind of Trump do you think we're going to get tonight?
I think we're going to get a poised Trump tonight.
You think?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's going to be a little bit more reserved. I think that he is going to let her talk because she is her own noose.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to let her do a lot of the talking and then just kind of break it down. And his answer needs to be every time, where were you the last 4 years?
Exactly. That's the big thing. I think it's because it's really, you know, Trump's got a 4-year record that he can tout. Kamala does too, as the vice president for Joe Biden. But
it's a much different record. Her record is much different than his record. And, you know, I do love the fact that everybody's painting it as flip-flopping and not calling it what it is, which is just outright lying.
Right.
Let's call it what it is. And I hope he uses that term repeatedly. That's a lie. You're a liar.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're not flip-flopping. Right. You're lying.
Right.
So her values haven't changed.
No.
But let's go ahead and tune in, and we're going to be chiming in and out with all kinds of things. So,
and the mics are muted when the other is talking. So let's take you to Philadelphia now, and the first presidential debate of 2024.
The only presidential debate of 2024.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We
How
want
much
to welcome
plastic
viewers
surgery
watching on
is on
ABC
this stage
and
right
around
now?
the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from
I wonder
taking
if
the
he can
stage in this
smile.
unprecedented race
Move
for
his-
president.
move
And
his,
I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting
eyebrows.
could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first
He does
debate
look like
since
it's
President
sunny
Biden
outside
withdrew
all
from
the
the race
time.
on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely
Are they
new
even going to have
dynamic.
another
And that
debate?
brings us to the rules of tonight's debate.
I don't know.
90
That's a
minutes
good
with
question.
two commercial
This is the
breaks.
this
No
is the
topics
only
or questions have
scheduled
been shared with the
one, right?
campaigns. The
I
candidates
don't
will
think
have
they're
2
going
minutes
to,
answer
because this is a
questions, and this is the
live
clock. That's what they'll be
opportunity
seeing.
for
2 minutes
her,
for rebuttals
and she doesn't
and
like
1 minute
that.
for follow-ups,
Everything needs to be
clarifications, or responses.
scripted. So
Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No
that
pre-written
clock
notes
is
allowed.
gonna be her worst
There
enemy.
is no audience here tonight in this hall at the
You know what I'm
National
saying?
Constitution Center.
Yeah.
This is an intimate setting.
well,
for
and we
two
all know that
candidates
clock is
who have
also
never
his
met.
worst enemy.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement
So,
of the
fair
evening.
assessment.
Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice
She's on the
President
right.
Kamala Harris
They gave
and
her
President Donald Trump.
Same thing Joe Biden did.
Yeah.
They gave her her own podium because she's 5'4". Golly, those mics are coming in hot, aren't they?
They are.
Let's have a good debate. Thank you.
Yeah, look, it's a little smaller, a little shorter. They needed a pink one.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child
Jeez,
tax
he's
credit
not
that we
answering
have
the
given in a
question.
long time so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who
Sister and
helped
I.
raise us. We call her our second
No,
mother.
me.
She was a
She's
small
right.
business owner.
She's right.
I
It's me.
love our
Is that right?
small businesses.
I
My
don't do
plan
grammar.
is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
Yes.
And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would
He
totally
sure does love
destroy
China.
everything that they've set out to do.
China.
They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy.
We had
because
some inflation, but
which is really
wasn't
known as
like
a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history.
This is
we
true.
were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for
Also
people,
true.
for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah.
You look at Aurora
Place is getting
in
wrecked.
Colorado. They are taking
Springfield
over the
is.
towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our
I love her
country.
face.
I'll do it again
She-
and even better.
We are going to get to
don't-
immigration.
she's
and
very
border
easy to
security
read.
during this debate,
I don't know that
but,
it's a good thing that
I
they
would like
leave
to
her
let
up all
Vice
the time.
President
They
Harris
need to.
respond on the
They need
economy
to.
here.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
Why did they do this?
Donald
Because of
Trump
COVID.
left us
Right,
the
exactly.
worst public health
So they can say that
epidemic
because of
in a
COVID.
century.
Listen,
Donald Trump
it's Donald
left
Trump
us
is the one who got us the
worst attack
epidemic.
on our democracy
Come on.
since the Civil War.
Oh, please.
And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the
Wow.
hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook.
Yeah.
A bunch of
You know,
lies, grievances,
she didn't answer
and
the first
name
question,
calling.
by the way.
No.
What you're
Well,
going
they
to hear
don't.
tonight
She won't.
is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly
Wow.
that
I
the
love it.
American
They
people
still go with
want
it.
a
Yeah, they-
president
she's
who
making-
understands the importance
making him go on the
of
defensive.
bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump, will give you a minute here to
She's
respond.
trying to make him go on the
Number one, I have
defensive
nothing
now.
to do, as you know, and as she knows better
Project
than anyone, I have
2025, there you
nothing
go.
to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. we had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And
true.
people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced
exactly
back, and
right.
it bounced back, and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that
100%.
created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity
She's
economy.
not very-
And the best
she's having a little
economists
trouble
in
right
our
now.
country, if
Yeah.
not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future
one-
of America.
the one, by the way,
What
she
Goldman
copied
Sachs has said
straight from
is
Joe
that
Biden's
Donald Trump's
website.
plan
Yeah.
would make the
When-
economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
She doesn't have an
What
actual plan.
The Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit.
Oh.
16 Nobel
The
laureates
the
have
Wharton
described
School, that's where he
his
went.
economic plan
That's why they
as
pulled
something
that
that
one.
would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of solid money for our country. Just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan.
Yes,
and
she
it's
did.
like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
This was on X.
Mr. President, I
when
do
you
want to drill
share
down on something
stuff
you
from
both
her
brought up.
website,
The
Yeah.
Vice
it
President brought up,
it
you
says
goes to
Harris,
Biden's.
you
It says
responded,
re-elect
and let's
Joe
drill down on
Biden,
this,
and all
because
the
your
metadata
plan
and
is
the
what she
code,
calls is
like the
essentially a
base code
national
for it,
sales
is all
tax.
straight
Your
from his
proposal
website.
calls
So
for
they just
tariffs, as you
copied it.
pointed out here, on foreign
She's
imports
calling it
across
national.
the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years.
Yeah, they have.
I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen
In
a
three-
worse period
three
of time.
years, 3.5
People
years.
can't go out
Yeah,
and buy cereal
yeah.
or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy.
Yeah, they
and all
have.
you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your
mean,
response, and you heard what
and
the president said
shrinkflation.
there, because
People
the
forget about
Biden
the
administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out when a policy
Oh, I
about
wouldn't
China
talk
should
about
be
military
in making
if I
sure
were
the
her.
United States
I
of
wouldn't
America
either.
wins the
I wouldn't
competition
either.
for the
These people are
21st
the
century.
absolute, the
which
biggest
means
war hawks
focusing
in the,
on the
oh man, the
details
Democrat
of
Party
what
is war
that
hawk
requires,
central.
focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk
Workers'
about
rights.
this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that she was responsible
In
for
what context?
lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
Oh,
President Trump,
so
I'll let you
now,
respond.
so now it was a
They
lab
bought their
leak,
chips
is what she's
from
saying.
Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because
Isn't
of
it amazing how that
the
happens?
philosophies
We've
like
been saying
they
that
have
for
and
years.
policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's going to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist.
so
Everybody
great.
knows she's a Marxist.
Yes, she
Her
is.
father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy.
He's right.
Yeah.
They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud
Yes.
to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then
Wasn't a
last
complete
month,
win,
you
but
said
it
that
was
your
not bad.
administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that.
Yep.
And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her
Tampon
vice
Tim.
He is
presidential
really
pick
out of
says
it.
abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans
Nice.
do. Except
Tied
for-
himself to
very
Reagan.
important.
Yeah,
But we
yeah.
were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart
Yeah, it
for
has.
52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. And now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government.
Yes, the way it's supposed to be.
I did great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to
I
President
hate when they
Trump.
do that.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising
See how many times they
fact.
fact check
Let's understand how we got
Kamala
here.
Harris.
Yeah.
Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade.
No, that they would protect
And
the
they
Constitution,
did
lady.
exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape
But that's
and
up to the
incest, which
state.
understand
Exactly.
what that means.
Then go do
A
different
survivor
states.
of a
Exactly.
It's not
crime
rocket
violation
science.
to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body
What about
next.
the
That is
baby's body? That's what I
immoral.
want to know.
Yes.
And
It's,
one does not
they-
have to abandon their faith or deeply
So
held
messed up.
beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail.
that's a
and she's bleeding
miscarriage.
out in
That's
a car in
that's
the
not the same
parking lot.
thing.
That's a
She didn't want
miscarriage.
that.
Okay.
Her husband didn't want
Easy.
that.
That's an easy live fact
A
check.
12 or
False.
13-year-old survivor of incest being forced
well,
to
he
carry
just
a
said
pregnancy
he
to
just said
term?
incest.
Yeah.
They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand,
Junior
if Donald
Coltrane.
Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in
He
his
just said the way-
Project
the way she
2025,
speaks is so
there would be a
Karen.
national
Yes.
abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring
right.
your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American
Could
people
you imagine being married
believe
to her?
that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should
What
not
about
be
the
made by the
baby's
government.
body? Why do they
Thank
do
you,
this?
Vice President
Yeah,
Harris.
the only way to,
There she
to,
goes
to
again. It's a lie.
it's dehumanizing
I'm
the
not
child. That's
signing
all you
a
can do.
ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting.
They keep
And it may
turning
take
it back
little
to a
time,
federal issue.
but
It's
for
not a federal
52
issue. He's
years,
trying to say this
issue
should be a
has
state
torn
issue.
Yeah.
Our country
Yeah.
apart, and they've wanted it.
You ever
back
thought
in
about
the
how many
states, and I
hundreds
did
of
something
thousands
that
of
nobody
baby
thought was
lives have been
possible.
saved because of
The
this?
states are
Because of
now
the overturning
voting.
of Roe v. Wade?
What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Right.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it
Well,
came
I
to your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Right.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as you rightly mentioned,
What are they?
Nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through
Good gracious.
is unconscionable.
Everybody that's watching, hit
And
us.
the
What do you all
people
think
of
about
America
IVF?
have not-
We've got
the
some folks that are
majority of
on here.
Americans
What's
believe
your all's
in a
take on
woman's right to make
IVF? Give
decisions
me your
about her own
opinions down in the
body,
comment section.
And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader.
What does that have to do with
When
abortion?
they got a very negative
The
decision
IVF.
on IVF from
So,
the Alabama courts,
People are still making,
I saw the
so
people
the
of
big argument
Alabama
against
and the
IVF is the fact
legislature
that you
2 days
are
later voted it in.
fertilized
I've been a
eggs
leader on it.
are
They
being
know
frozen,
that, and
so
everybody
it's a
else
human
knows it.
being. If you
I have
stay
been a
consistent
leader
with
on
moment of
fertilization,
conception,
IVF.
that moment of
And the other
conception
thing,
is
they-
a life, and that they are
you
being
should
frozen
ask,
and then destroyed
will she
later
allow
on
abortion
if they
in the
aren't
8th month,
used.
9th month,
So it's
7th month?
still the death of a.
Okay, would you
Right.
do that? Why don't you ask her
Why-
that
why
question?
don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question, would you
Because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do
Yes,
with
he
the
said
baby.
that. We remember
Thank
that.
you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the
Good for
election
him.
to act? And would you have done
Good for
anything
him.
differently
That's
from
a good
President
question.
Biden on this?
Yeah.
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed
No.
us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States.
It was
I
to
know
process
there are so many
more
families
people.
watching tonight
That's
who've
what-
been personally
that's what their whole
affected
border plan
by the
was.
surge of fentanyl
No,
in
but
our
he-
country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us
But remember,
to
they
prosecute
rejected that
transnational
bill.
criminal organizations for
Because there was
trafficking
other
in
things
guns, drugs,
attached
and
to
human
it.
beings. But you know what happened to
Yeah.
that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a
Oh,
problem.
God. It didn't fix any
And
problem.
understand, this comes
There was
at
a lot of pork
time
in that bill. I
where
remember
the
this
people of
whole
our
thing.
country actually need a leader
So they can go ahead and
who
point to
engages
those
in
those
solutions,
1,500.
who actually
But there was
addresses the
green
problems
energy.
at hand.
There were other things
But
that were
what
tied
we
to
have
that
in the
bill.
former
And so that's why
president
he
is
killed
someone
it,
who
was
would prefer to
because
run on
there was
problem
a lot of
instead
things that
fixing
were
a
not
problem. And I'll
about
tell you
it.
something. He's going to talk about immigration
100%.
a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go.
You knew that
And
was
the
coming.
people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there.
Fact.
And then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back.
Yeah, they do.
Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live
Fact.
there.
I just did a video
and
about
this is what's
this.
happening in our country.
But she's
And
saying
a
it's
shame.
unbelievable.
As far as the
She's
rallies are
disconnected. She doesn't know
concerned,
what's
as
going
far
on in
as
the world.
the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals.
Except for
within
the video.
immigrant community.
Except for the
I've seen
literal
people on television
video.
say,
Yes.
This is
It's on
the-
People on
television.
television
Yep.
say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he
And
said that.
they're
and
going
maybe
into the
that's a good
towns,
thing to say for
cutting
a
the
city
heads off the
manager.
I'm not
ducks in the
taking this
parks
to
But the
television.
and
people
eating
on
them.
television
Yep.
saying their
Manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the
The
rest
city
of what you've
manager's
heard.
lying.
You talk about extreme. You know,
Here's the
this
thing.
is, I
Everybody
think,
in
one of the
America
reasons
has seen
why
that
in
video
this
that's on
election,
Instagram,
I
on
actually
Twitter.
have the endorsement
Everybody has
of
seen the
200
video.
Republicans
And so you
who
can
have
sit back and go,
formerly
well, that's not
worked with
happened. The
President
city
Bush,
manager just
Mitt
said
Romney,
that didn't happen.
And John McCain,
But
including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you
Well,
want
that's
to
a shock.
really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former
Democrats.
chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous.
she's got
and
good talking
unfit.
points. I'm going to give her
His
this.
former Secretary
Great
of
talking
Defense
points.
has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
The problem is, though, is
President Trump,
she's
I'll
not
give you a quick
addressing
minute
the,
to respond
the issues.
No, she's not.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody
He's right.
has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't
Yep.
fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Oh, nicely
Let me
played.
continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier,
Yep.
so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to
I mean, how many
her
stories have
to
we
put
heard
into our
about
country. And
time after time?
This will be one of the greatest
A migrant
mistakes
has
in
killed,
history for them
raped
to
and killed
allow.
somebody. A
And I
migrant
think
has
they
done that, you know.
probably did it because they think they're going to get votes.
So it's
but
almost
not
like
worth it
the proof
because
is
they're destroying
we all
the
see the
fabric
proof
of our country by
that
what they've done.
that what
There's
he's
never
saying,
been
even though
anything
it's
done like this at all. They've
it's a harsh
destroyed the
word,
fabric of
what
our
he's saying
country.
is true.
Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down. All over the world, except here, crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country.
Of course, he's going to fact check.
They were defrauding statements. They didn't
Fact checking
include the
Trump,
worst
but not
cities.
her.
They
That
didn't
is so
include the
jacked
cities
up.
with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you.
Correct.
I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has
Seriously.
been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance
Well,
is
she hadn't
in
answered a
November
single
at his own
dadgum
criminal
question. No.
sentencing.
All
Not a
she's done
question.
is just
And
try to
let's be
list off the
clear,
typical
where
Democrat
each
talking
person
points about Trump.
stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race.
What does that
It is
have to do with
important
Trump?
that we move forward.
The former
that we
vice
turn the
president called
page
for defunding.
on this same old tired rhetoric and address
I
the
must have missed
needs
that
of the
point.
American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm
He's
winning
right.
most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out.
Yep.
It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be
Oh, my
immune
gosh.
from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again.
He's not answering a
Understand,
single
this
question.
is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting,
Not a single
terminate
question.
the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know
If you
now
want to
the
know what
court
she's
won't
been
stop
doing
him.
for
We
the
know
past
J.D.
2 weeks
Vance is
or
not
Yeah,
gonna stop
yeah,
him.
here it is.
This
It's
is
up to
it.
the American
Memorizing
people
talking points.
to stop him.
It's like, I don't have to answer a
Vice
single
President
question.
Harris, in your last run
In
for
her mind, she's
president-
like,
Weaponized, please.
line
This is the
21.
one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made.
No,
but
you
in
won't.
particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking
Oh,
mother
gosh.
who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increased by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to
Do you know the percentage of
having
people
a
who are
friend
given
when I
money,
was
by
in
the
high
way, that
school
go
who was
broke
sexually assaulted by her
when they're
stepfather.
given
of course.
money?
And
Yeah,
my focus then
yeah.
on protecting women and children
Where-
from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about
Like the-
protecting Social Security and
Wow.
Medicare is
Wow.
based on
Like all the
long-standing
prisoners
work that I
who
have done,
worked extra?
protecting
Yeah.
seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down. And name calling. The true measure of the leader is the
She is a
leader
Democrat,
who
right?
actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up.
Wow.
I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response?
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up. Very
Look at-
wrongly, very
if
horribly.
that's not true.
And everybody's
Meanwhile,
laughing at it.
there's
okay?
tweets.
They're all
There's-
laughing at it.
we're not
She
gonna
gave up
stop.
at
They're not
least
gonna
12
stop.
And probably
Yeah.
14 or
Yep.
15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute. I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please.
Nice.
Does that sound familiar?
Don't lie.
She went out.
Oh,
She went
that
out
was so good.
in Minnesota.
That was from her in the
Yes.
And
last
wanted to
debate.
let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis. She went out and raised money to get them out of jail.
Yep.
She did things that nobody would ever think of.
That's not
Now
true,
She
she's
wants
saying.
to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
Yep.
This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted?
Good question.
That's a great question.
Good question.
They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
Yeah, took over the police department.
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
He probably regrets Twitter
I had nothing
shutting down
to
his
do with
account.
that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want
So
Vice
I love how
President
they're
Harris to respond
making
here.
trying to force him to answer the question.
was
They
at the
just let her
Capitol on
spout
January
and
6th.
wax poetic.
I was the
Here we
vice
go.
president.
Start the violin music.
An acting senator. I was
Start it.
And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob to attack
I do
our
love
nation's
I do
capital,
love how they
to desecrate
inflate
our nation's
this
capital.
whole
On that
thing
day,
to be
140 law enforcement
such
officers
an
were injured,
incredibly
and
serious
some
thing.
died.
when the vast majority of
Understand,
Americans look
the
at it and go,
former president has been
That's-
indicted and impeached
that is the dumbest
for exactly
thing
that reason.
to
But
like
this is not an isolated situation.
when you see the officers
Let's
welcoming
remember
people in,
Charlottesville,
when you see all this stuff,
where
oh,
there
here we
was
go,
a mob of
Charlottesville. Oh
people
yeah, that's
carrying
right.
tiki torches,
There you go.
spewing anti-Semitic
That's out of the
hate.
Biden playbook. I mean,
And
that's
what did
It is.
that
the
is
president
straight out of the
then at
Biden
time
playbook.
say?
It's
There were fine people on each side.
Oh my,
Let's remember.
that I'm
Context-
Sorry.
when
context-
the
If I had
Proud Boys
hair,
are
I would pull it
militia.
out every time.
context
somebody
is
says
everything,
The
isn't it?
president said, the former
Jeez.
president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone
context
watching who
is
remembers what
everything.
January 6th was,
I bet she hasn't
I
even seen the
say
full clip.
we don't have to
so
go
she
back.
might just be.
let's not go
She's
back.
doing-
We're
she's
not
saying what
going
they're
back.
telling her to
It's
say,
time
Well,
to
yeah,
turn the
like-
page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you.
I'm going to go back and listen to
stand
this again, and
for
I'm going to
country,
get a count.
to stand
of every
for our
falsehood that she has
democracy, to
spouted since
stand
she's been
for
on this
rule
stage.
Well,
of
they
law,
won't.
and
No,
to
they won't.
end
I'm
the
gonna do it.
chaos.
Yeah. And I
to
want to
watch
play,
end
and I want
the
her own
approach that
words.
is about
Those
attacking
moments,
the
like I
foundations
feel
of
like
our
if I could
democracy
pull up
'cause you don't
stuff
like the
of her
outcome.
saying,
And be
you know, I'm going to
clear,
ban fracking.
On that point, Donald
Oh, yeah.
Trump,
I mean,
the
they did bring it
candidate,
up that she
has
said that
in
she
this
was going to
election
ban
there will be a
fracking. They brought that
bloodbath.
up, but she, you know,
If
she's
this
changed
and
her
the outcome of
mind.
this
She never
election is
answered
not
that
to his
question,
liking,
really.
Just did the bloodbath one too.
Let's turn the
Yeah.
page on this.
Which
Let's
was-
not go back.
Talking
Let's
about the
Also-
economy.
a course
Yes.
for the future and not go
You know,
backwards
I
to the
feel really
past.
bad for the
Let me just
people
follow up
who
here.
have bought into all of this stuff.
It was a different term, and it was a term that
So-
related to energy because they have
This is-
destroyed our
This
energy
is clever
business. That was
because
where bloodbath
so
was.
putting him
Also,
constantly on the
on
defensive.
Yeah, it's
Charlottesville,
very well
that
played.
story has
He
been,
needs
as
to
you
go
would
on the
say,
offensive
debunked.
soon.
And
Laura
I know for a
Ingraham,
fact,
Sean
I
Hannity,
won't say I know for a
Jesse,
fact.
all of these people,
I'm so confident
they
she had these
covered it.
questions
If they go
beforehand.
an extra
Yeah.
sentence,
And
they will
the
see it was
moderators
perfect.
are
It was
obviously
debunked
on
in
her
almost
side.
every
Yes.
newspaper,
Putting him
but
on the
they still
defensive
bring it up,
Yes.
for
just
an hour and a
like
half
they bring
straight.
2025 up. They bring all of this stuff
Wow.
up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get
Yep.
him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the
sorry,
border
that's
is
funny.
closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people,
I wanna-
unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in
No,
2020?
I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to
Sarcasm
do
is
look
lost
at it,
in
and
this
they
day and
should have
age.
sent it
Yeah,
back
it
to
is.
the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in,
True that.
they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know
Here we
this,
go.
you
Fact
and your
check,
allies,
Trump.
60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said there
They
was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's
Gosh.
the other thing.
Except down in
They said
Georgia,
we didn't have
which it's been-
standing, a technicality. Can you
That's all that
imagine a
testimony that's
system
been in the
where
Yep.
a
State House?
person in
It's
an election
unbelievable.
doesn't have standing,
Wild.
The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline.
Good for him.
And they have
That's
put
old
it
news.
into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker, so he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple
now
of
he's
days.
putting
This
words
was a
in his
post
mouth.
from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when
Well,
I
this is
win,
nefarious,
those
man.
people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Wow. So that is a backhanded
Donald Trump was fired
way
by 81 million people.
of.
So let's be clear about that.
Can you
And clearly
believe
he is having a
that they just
very
asked that
difficult time
question?
Yeah,
processing
it's not a
that.
question. He made a statement. It's
But
like when you
we
ask,
cannot
when you
afford
pray,
to have a
you know,
president
Lord,
of the
please
United States
help my wife
who
to be able to
attempts,
do
as
the
he did in
dishes
the
tonight.
past,
So
to
it's
upend
one of those
the
like,
will of the voters in a
Right.
free and fair
you know,
election. And I'm going to tell you
Wow.
that I have traveled the world as
unprecedented,
vice
man.
president of the United
well, we knew it
States.
was going to be like this, right?
And world
Everybody
leaders are
everybody
laughing
talked
at
about
Donald
how
Trump.
slanted
I
that
have
they
talked
are.
with
In fact,
military leaders, some of whom
as
work
far as
with
coverage
you,
goes,
and they say
7%
you're a
of their
disgrace.
coverage of Trump is
And when you
is
then talk in
not
this
negative.
way,
Right.
Not
in a
positive, but
presidential
not
debate
negative.
and
Neutral.
deny
Whereas for
what
her,
over and over again
it's-
are court cases
it's
you
pretty
have
much 100%
lost
positive.
because
They're
you did,
in love with
fact,
her. They
lose
drank the
that
Kool-Aid.
election.
So all these
It leads
questions and
one to
everything they're
believe
feeding
that
her
perhaps
and
we do not
giving her
have in the candidate
opportunities
to my
to
right, the temperament
they just
or
it's
the
all-
ability to not be confused.
that's why
about
she agreed to
fact.
go on him. That's why she
deeply
agreed to do this
troubling,
in
and the
this
American
debate.
People deserve
And
better.
it's not a Fox
I'll give
debate.
you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord
That's
Stream
another
2
question
pipeline,
they need to get
and
into
Biden
is
put it back on day one, but he ended
international
the XL
politics,
pipeline,
right, with her.
the
She doesn't
XL
know them.
pipeline
Right.
in our country.
And
He
so they
ended
haven't
that,
asked
but
any
he
of
let
these
the
questions
Russians build a
yet.
pipeline going all over
I
Europe
know
and heading into
Ukraine, she's
Germany,
going to
the
be
biggest
we're
pipeline
going to stand
in the
by
world.
him and give him weapons and everything else.
Victor Orban,
You know,
said it.
But
He said
she
the
doesn't know
most
who Viktor
respected,
Orban is.
most feared person is
Right?
Donald
No,
Trump.
well, I mean, I don't
We
know.
had
Her
no
aides probably told
problems
her.
when
It's
Trump
probably
was
in her notebook
president.
somewhere.
But
Yeah.
when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he had 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war.
Oh,
and
good. Here we
hostages
go.
who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President
This is a big
Harris,
one.
in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October
Yeah, please
7,
let us know.
Hamas, a terrorist organization,
Okay, she at least said that.
slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that
what's
we
your plan?
must chart a course for a two-state solution. And
Okay, so
in
that's her
that
plan, a two-state solution.
There must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, and far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech.
True.
She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around.
Yep.
It's all
Look
true.
at what's happening with the
What he needs to
Houthis
do,
and Yemen.
he
Look
needs
at
to,
what's going
what
on
he
in the
just
Middle East.
did
This
by
would have
saying you
never
covered
happened.
it.
I will get that
Now it
settled
puts
and
it back in the
fast, and I'll get
moderators,
the
and they
war
can't go,
with
no, we didn't,
Ukraine and
that's not
Russia
what,
ended.
like,
If I'm
no, you did cover
president-elect,
it.
I'll get it done. It's
true.
Just
before
like
even
you said,
becoming
I mean,
president.
Vice President
all the
Harris
things that
says
they
you
have
hate
said
Israel.
about Harris.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy.
my
It is
Wow.
well known that he admires dictators.
Coming from her,
wants
that
to
is
be a dictator
shocking.
on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine.
I
It
feel
is
for
well
Donald Trump a
known
lot,
that
man.
He said when
'cause
Russia went into
you can see the look
Ukraine,
on his
it
face.
was
He's like, why am I?
brilliant. It is well known
How
he
did our country get
exchanged
to be?
love letters with
How
Kim
was this our
Jong-un,
candidate for the other side?
and it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so
except
clear.
Putin came out
they
that
can
he's in favor of her.
manipulate you
Right.
with flattery and favors. And
How does that
is
work?
Why
They're rooting for him.
so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why.
She's just been
we
talking to General
understand
Milley.
that
I think
we
that's the
have to
only
have
one.
a
One-
president
one or
who
two,
is
right?
not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Well, she
They're
said
the ones,
she
and
talked a
she's
lot,
the
but she
one
sure didn't say
that
much.
caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week. said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent.
Go back to
And I just
Afghanistan.
asked one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back.
They
with
keep
much
doing
more of
that.
this historic
Yeah, they do.
ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in
Okay,
Philadelphia.
commercials,
Back in a moment.
comments. Let's
Wow,
go through some fun stuff.
Man alive.
So he is on the defensive. She has her talking points, and I'm sure he has been way too busy to hire somebody that looks like her to do a false debate practice with.
Yeah.
Where has she been? She's been in a bunker practicing with a Trump impersonator to try to be more comfortable so he doesn't get under her skin. And it shows she's doing very good. I think she's very poised. I think she has not yet, though, really answered a question.
That's my big beef. Is that
it sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been no answering. So, and I think that was the game. It's what it looks like the game plan was all along. So, yeah, they're going to ask you the questions, and I have to believe that some of these questions, because there's still a bit of a, it's not a segue, but it's like she can approach the question and then seamlessly move into just an attack against Trump, which he's then forced to defend. So maybe she did, maybe she didn't. Maybe I shouldn't make that accusation, but yeah, no questions are being answered. That's my beef. He's answering the questions.
He's answering some of the questions.
Oddly, better than he normally does,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's giving some specifics, which he's not known to do. But yeah,
And how do you, I always struggle with this because you get these numbers and they say things like, well, the economy is the best it's ever been. The economists say, well, okay, according to, because in some regards, there's a lot of things out there that are a matter of opinion or preference. So you go, the economy is the best it's ever been for the stock market.
mm,
Is that your litmus test? Or is it the price of bread?
right.
So who's to gauge that economy part? I mean, right now we all know that the economy is not the best it's ever been.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there's official numbers, and you could look at the CBO, like the Congressional Budget Office, or you could look at everybody and their brothers doing stats work out there. You can find out what the economy is actually doing, and the market is what people love to use as a gauge, but that's not an accurate one. You made the perfect point. It's okay, fine. Most people don't. A lot of people don't have anything invested in the stock market, but they got to buy eggs, they got to buy bread, they got to buy ground beef. How's that going for them?
Right.
And it's going horribly because their wages aren't going up.
Right.
And why are their wages not going up? Because the economy is still stagnant.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
Right.
And
even if their wages go up, their wages have to go way up.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen.
No.
And so I guess, you look at this and you go, okay, were we better off when he was in office? And yes, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know how anybody in their right mind, I don't know how anybody can make the claim that we were not better off when he was in office than we are now financially. And if you have a different opinion or want to share your idea of how we were not better off under him, please chime in, because I don't know how you can make that argument. When it comes to Israel, yes, she has made some statements regarding Palestinians, and she is part of this. I don't think I want to say this, and I've looked into her a little bit on this stuff. She has not dabbled enough in that arena to have a concrete position on anything. She's done what she's been told to do.
Yeah. Well, and she's a political chameleon, so she just follows the talking points. That's all she's ever done. And
so I guess...
And she's able to evade. She's been given the opportunity by the media to evade certain questions. So if they ask her something and she can kind of shrug it off or walk away or whatever it happens to be, they'll ask her the question when she's getting off a plane, and she'll, oh, I didn't hear you, and walk, that sort of thing. So she's been given plenty of opportunities to not have to answer. But when she does, it's a typical party line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I don't think it's going good for him tonight.
I don't think it's going great for him either.
I'm a little sad about that. I wanted it to be more of a. She is very well polished. She comes across as this compassionate, caring, concerned individual. And then, of course, her facial expressions when he's talking are not helping her. I don't think although they never help anybody. You want that stoic person, right? You want that person you can't read them. Well, both of them, you're able to kind of read. I think he's so disgusted with her right now, he can't even stand it. Let's go ahead.
Yeah. Tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's
through strength. You know,
we don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human
They don't want him to
lives
say that there's any compromise
from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Vladimir Putin be dealing with her.
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Same difference.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky.
Is a terrible standing point for her because we don't have that on the southern border.
Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank.
She's more worried about
Poland
Ukraine's
and
border
Romania.
than she is about our border.
And through the work
kind of
that
the
I and
MO
others
for the
did, we
Democrats
brought
right now.
50 countries together together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we
because they don't have to pay as much money.
The importance of
Right.
the greatest military alliance
Saves
the
them
world has ever
billions.
known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later.
Well, she just said she met with
we
them.
have
That's
with
what
her.
she did,
She's
yeah.
worse than Biden, in my opinion. I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader
She didn't answer the
upholding
question.
international
No, she
rules
didn't.
and norms, as a leader who shows strength.
And he knows she
understanding
didn't.
that the
And he might be
alliances
like, well,
we
did you
have
meet him?
around the world
That's what
are
I would do. Did you meet him?
dependent on our
I can't remember if
ability
she
to
did or
look
not. I'm gonna
out
try to
for our
live fact check that
friends
one.
and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance
She
of
doesn't need to
America's
lecture
role and
us on
responsibility
who the
in
president
terms of
is.
ensuring that there
We
is
know
stability
he's
and
here.
ensuring
He's
we
right there.
stand up for
This is
our
all so many
principles and
empty
not
words.
sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations.
And we
both
all
on
know that's
trade
true.
and on
We
NATO.
remember this.
I got them to pay up.
This
by
happened.
saying
Yeah.
one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Watch this.
I do
She's
want to
not
ask
gonna
the
answer.
Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played
I'm
out?
glad that he asked that.
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century.
She's trying to
but
take
let's
his...
understand how we
wow.
got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president,
She keeps going back to, let's
negotiated
understand
one of
to
the
how we
weakest
got to
deals
where
you
we
can
are.
Imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security
She's 3.5
advisor
years
said
into this
it was a
presidency, and they're
weak,
still blaming him for
terrible
this stuff.
deal.
This is
And
what the
here's
same
how
thing
it went
Obama
down.
did with
He
Bush.
bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American
He showed the leader of the
diplomacy,
Taliban
where
a
we
picture of his house and
invite
said, if you kill another
receive
American citizen,
respected world
I know
leaders.
exactly where you live.
And this
And they left for 80 billion?
former president,
Is it
as
80 billion
president,
worth of equipment to the
invited
Taliban?
them
Yeah.
to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect.
And right now,
of the
there's a
United
lot of
States
military
America
people
around
who
the
are like,
world.
I
Vice
can't.
President
How
Harris,
can
thank
she
you.
even
President
say
Trump,
that?
Your response to her saying that
She
you
didn't
began
answer the question, by the
negotiations
way.
with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
Yep.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country.
Oh, fun.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to
You knew
turn
this was
black,
coming.
You
and
knew
now
it.
she wants
Yeah,
to be known
yeah.
as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
No, here we go.
I think it's
It's
honestly, I think
offensive.
it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president.
But
who
even
has
people in the black
consistently,
community
over
are
the course of his
like
career,
she is saying.
attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Whoa!
You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much
Seriously?
more in common than what separates us, and we don't want
Oh, please.
this kind of approach that is just constantly
Democrat
trying
Party
to divide
lives
us,
and dies
especially
by
by
that.
race. And let's remember,
She's
how
taken
Donald
a
Trump
lot of
started.
stuff from
He
the
was
Republican
a-
playbook, from the
a-
conservative
a-
playbook.
land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me,
Are you listening to this?
can we please just
I am.
have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people?
I think the hard part is
knowing that
with
regardless
this, right,
of people's
is
color
that
or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and
the
want a
Dems
president
are the
who
ones that are
invests in
attacking
those, not
based
in hate
on
and
race.
division.
He's a racist.
President
He's a
Harris,
racist.
thank you. Lindsay?
He never,
President Trump, this is now your
like he
third
said,
time.
I don't care.
Yeah.
This
I don't
is the
care.
most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then
I
they
don't even remember
pled,
what the
we're
Central
not
Park
guilty.
5 was.
But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time
because
ago.
there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good
I mean, if he just
economy
keeps
is.
going back to
Their
this,
oil policies, every
if
single
he just keeps
policy.
going
And
back
remember
to the
this,
military,
she
to
is
the
Biden. You know,
economy,
she's trying to get away from
like,
Biden.
if they
I don't
just
know
keep
the
going
gentleman, she
back.
says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get
I
away
will give
with
her
that.
one thing.
you.
She can
Time's up.
memorize.
I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people.
but you haven't done it.
I believe in what
That's
we
all.
can
She's
do
been part of the
to
disparagement.
Yeah.
strengthen our
She's been
small
disparaging
businesses, which is
people for the
why
past-
I have a plan. Let's
Oh.
talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to
No, you
give
don't.
No, you
startup
don't. We've
businesses
read your
$50,000
plan.
tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life.
Here's your plan,
To help
printing
you
more money.
in that most critical
That's-
stage of your child's
right.
development.
Not to help
I
the
have a
economy, just
plan
to buy votes.
That is about
It's-
basically
it's
what-
all
allowing
based
people to be
on
able to pursue
getting the vote.
what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
And then,
That's
and then
the
for the
kind of
unrealized,
conversation I believe
the
that
unrealized
people
gains
really
tax of
want
25%,
tonight,
Exactly.
as
which
opposed
makes
to a
you not own
conversation that is
anything.
constantly
Right,
about
exactly.
belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice
and
President
move
Harris,
forward.
thank you.
So
Let's turn to
dirty because you know she has been one of the biggest purveyors
Yes.
Let's turn to
of hateful
policy.
content
Plan
for the past
to
12
defund
years.
The police.
And then-
she has a
Wow,
plan
I hope people
to
aren't buying this.
confiscate
Surely people aren't
everybody's
buying
gun.
this.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump-
no, the
President
former
Trump-
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
gonna
just
we're
need to
gonna move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he
Good.
said
President Trump, This is now
There you
your
go.
third
Finally
time
cut her
running for
off.
president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make.
You know, that's the
Do
one
I
thing that
save
I,
it and make it
his
as good as
train,
it can be,
he has,
or do I let it rot?
his train of
And
thought
I
comes
saved it.
out.
I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a
Wonder
plan
what she's
that's gonna
writing down.
cost our people, our population, less money and be better
wonder if
health care
somebody's
than
feeding her
Obamacare,
answers. She have a
then I
tablet
would
up there?
absolutely do it. But until then,
She
I'd
might,
run it as
or an
good
earpiece.
as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only
Golly,
change it
her
if we come
face.
up with something that's
She's so-
better and less expensive.
The
And there are
condescending
concepts
look,
and
as if,
options
like, we watched this
have
vacuous,
to do that, and you'll be hearing
know
about it in
nothing
the not too
person
distant
as
future.
vice president,
Vice President
and then
Harris, in
because she could memorize
2017,
something
you
over
supported
2
Bernie
weeks,
Sanders'
all of a sudden
proposal
thinks
to do
she's
away with private insurance and create a
greatest
government-run
thing since
healthcare
sliced
system.
bread.
2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do
She
is
does have an
maintain and
earpiece
grow the
in.
Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act,
You said it.
understand, just look at the history
I
to
mean,
know where
you
people
keep saying
stand.
it, both of
When
them,
Donald Trump
her
was
and
president,
Walz.
I'm glad
60
you own a
times
gun.
he tried
I
to
guess
get
you're
rid
going
of
to
the
keep
Affordable
yours
Care
during
Act.
your
60
your
times.
buyback.
I was
And
a
their
senator
security, their
at
Secret
the
Service
time.
protection will
When
obviously
I
keep
will
theirs.
never
Right.
forget the early morning hours when
Here's
it
the
was
stories.
up for a vote in the United States Senate, and the late great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like?
Okay.
Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent
Coming
had
up with
diabetes?
hypotheticals now.
And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed
of
for
our
the first
economy,
time
and it's
Medicare to negotiate drug
absolutely
prices
wrecking
on
our
behalf
healthcare
of
system.
you, the American people.
Sure, go
Donald
for
Trump
it.
said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate
I feel like that.
drug prices. He never did. We did.
That's an issue.
And now
That's
we have
that's
capped
really
the cost
kind of one of
insulin
those
at
like,
$35
oh
a
yeah,
month. Since I've been
that's
vice
still an
president,
issue.
We have capped the cost of prescription medication.
You know
for
what I mean?
seniors
It's
at
not an
$2,000 a
issue.
year.
It's not
And when
something
I
that
am
anybody's
president,
running
we
on
will do that
because
for all
most people are at this
understanding
point are like,
that the
whatever,
value I bring to
right?
this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it.
Once you
And
start
the
making stuff a
plan
right,
has to be
that
to
means if
strengthen
it's
the
a right
Affordable Care Act,
deemed
not
that
get
way by
rid
the
of
federal
it.
government, it
Vice
can be
President
taken
Walz,
away.
in terms
Yes.
of
So if
where
they can
Donald
grant
Trump
it, they can
stands
take
on
it
that.
I want
away.
to move to an issue
That's why
that's
you can't
important
make
for a lot
everything
of
out there a
mistake.
right.
At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less
So,
money.
in other words,
But
he's
she
not
won't
saying we're
improve private
getting rid
insurance
of
for
it.
people,
We've
private
got to
medical
fix it.
insurance.
Is kind of
That's
what he's
another
trying
thing
to
she doesn't
say.
want to get.
President
People are
Trump-
paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that
That's
you need
not
to be
true.
on.
President
It
Trump,
is
thank
true,
you. We
actually.
have another issue that
That's
we'd like to get
100%
to.
true.
That's
important
actually
for
her-
a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather
You have 1 minute.
occurrences,
What
who
would you
now
do?
is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also
Anybody wants to know
increased
where the
domestic
inflation
gas
came from?
production
That's
to
part of it.
historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up
There's that number of
factories around the world. Donald
800,000
Trump said he was going to create
jobs.
manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American
Boy,
automobiles.
she's stealing
It
all of his
includes
talking points, isn't she?
growing
She's
what
trying to
we
make
can do
herself into a
around American
Donald Trump
manufacturing and opening
version
up
of a
auto
Democrat.
plants,
Yeah.
not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing.
So I wouldn't have answered it that way. I'm pretty sure I would have answered it differently.
Did my thing just freeze?
Yeah. But I would have definitely answered that last question quite a bit differently with climate change and, you know, the trillions of dollars that they have invested or spent on climate change is just like a bridge too far when we're a country that, as far as our production of, if you believe in climate change, we're a country as far as our production of the problem is relatively small compared to China and to India and to Pakistan and to all these other countries that have absolutely no filter, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, the right answer is I would tell them they got to clean up their act, because we're about as clean as we're going to get. We've got more restrictions, strangleholds on different industries right now. Can we do better? Sure, we can try to do better, but you cannot build this economy on wind.
No, you absolutely
and
cannot.
solar.
Right.
And that's where she wants to go. And that's what he needed to say is like, listen, she wants to go wind and solar and batteries, which are horrible for the environment.
No,
if you
the
really
heavy-
care about the environment.
Yeah, the heavy metals inside of the batteries inside of the sorry. Okay. I think we're good. I think we're good now. I had to get that
So-
thing going again. Yeah. It's not as good for the environment as everybody says. The birds that are being killed by the windmills and
Yeah, I mean, just all of
plus
it.
you can't recycle any of the materials. They're burning. It's not to mention the deal that the farmers who are leasing out their land,
Yes.
it is absolutely hosing them, these windmill companies. So they're responsible for a lot of the maintenance, and it ends up costing them more money. And then they've got this big hunk of junk in the middle of their field that they can't get rid of. Sorry, I don't want to go too far.
But I mean, there was a right answer, and that wasn't it.
Right.
And again, he closed out, and I hate that he did it. He closed out with Biden.
Yeah.
Should have never mentioned his name.
Yeah.
That's a fail.
I mean,
Other than I get what he's trying to say is that in this administration, she's part of Biden. She's part of all of it.
right.
And so when he goes back to this, she knows what's going on. She knows that it's crooked. She knows that what they've done is negotiate with people, talk about lining their pockets, right?
Mhm.
And he just didn't do a good job.
No.
And that's a real bummer.
Because there's a lot of people there. There's probably tens of millions of people watching this debate, and a lot of folks are on the uninformed voter side of things.
Yeah.
They're going to buy off on the talking points, hook, line, and sinker. They're going to think that she's eloquent. They're going to think that she's got her stuff together.
She's very presidential.
yeah.
She's very, yeah. I
Even-
mean,
I'd be personally, the condescending looks that she was giving, that sort of thing, drives
Yes.
me nuts. But nonetheless, that's just her delivery. That's why she got 2% of the vote in less than 2%.
Yes.
The first time she ran. But there's a lot of folks who are going to think, yep, this is the way to go. But they haven't been paying attention for the past 12 years, watching her and her policies.
and she did not. And what I will say, which is brilliant, she did not get into her specifics.
Right. Well, and she didn't have to answer a single question.
Right.
The
didn't-
moderators didn't force her to answer.
They didn't go back and say, will you?
Right.
Right. I mean, they did it to Trump, but they didn't do it to her.
Yeah.
And so I just find it, fascinating. I'm a little disappointed tonight in the delivery of, he's Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was-
you knew what his delivery was going to be.
She was prepared for that.
Yeah. Well,
She was well coached.
yeah. I just hope people will or have noticed and have realized as she is giving responses, these are not actual answers. This is complete deflection, and you're not picking up on it because the moderators are allowing it. When Donald Trump, who does the same thing to a certain degree, he'll veer off course a little bit, but they bring him back. They're making him come back to it. So while they're letting her get her points in that she wants to make without answering the question,
Right.
it doesn't go the other way with Donald Trump.
But I really do believe that if he would have just stuck to every answer being, look at the economy,
Yeah.
look at the state of our military, look at the economy.
Yeah.
Are you safer now than you were? Right. All he needed to do was just to keep running on his record without giving specifics. Even he didn't. So let's go ahead and get back into it.
And Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very
You know that he
different
has.
visions for our
She
country.
has. This is
One
memorized.
that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now
slept
vice
my way to the
president. I've
top.
only had one client, the people.
gonna
And I'll
say
tell you,
Willie
as
Brown.
a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
Okay, it sounded good. She sounded great. I mean, her closing statements, we want to go forward, not back, and we want to,
small businesses, families, abortion, the military.
She threw the abortion in there, and the military. I really question that one because I'm not sure where she is military wise. Like, where did?
Well, she's for war. This is the point that RFK Jr. has been making recently, and I did a video. It's sitting on my channel, so anybody that wants to watch it on Continue Freedom, you can go check it out. Where he's talking about basically the Democrats are the new party, like war party. They're the new neocons. And this is, she cares about the military. She probably wants to make the military as strong as she can because it's going to need to go fight a war in some foreign country somewhere at some point in time if she's elected president because the Democrat Party has become the party of war. They're the ones who they're wearing Ukraine pins, and we've sent $200 billion into Ukraine.
Right.
This is the military industrial complex has shifted itself from Republicans to Democrats because Republicans, like us, people like us, the more conservative folks, have a new vision that is not isolationism, but more selective use of military force. And that's not the Democrat Party anymore. It's really not. Here, I'm going to escape this here. There we go. We don't have to watch that mess anymore.
I do enjoy listening. I do enjoy the post-debate coverage and all the fact-checking and everything that goes on.
I'm going to tell you something else that really bothered me about this, that the fact that from the left is where we get the most divisive language, but because of the media, they have done a very masterful job of saying, no, the division's coming from the right. Donald Trump is this divisive figure. Meanwhile, it's the media that's been pushing the divisive messaging.
Well, and you saw that tonight.
Right. And then you see, especially when it came to the race question, when it came
Yes.
to, they have, Marxism does this. They have divided us on our immutable characteristics. And now Kamala Harris comes in, and again, the people are going to believe it. She comes in at the last minute, and let's focus more not on how we're different, but on what brings us together. From the purveyor of race,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
basically racist. What do you want to call it?
But that's how the enemy works. I guess this is what, and I'm not saying that Kamala Harris is Satan, right? But those are the same tactics.
Yeah.
It's the same tactics. It's subversive. It's very doublespeak. And
Very smooth deception.
Yeah, she flip-flopped. No. This none of what we're talking about is her changing her mind. I'm talking about her delivery and the way that she painted him to be, X, Y, and Z, when really it's all them that are X, Y, and Z, trying to throw that and project that on people to make them think that he's that way.
Right.
When, I guess a good way of looking at it is when he was asked about that question regarding her, is she black or is she, right? He said, I don't care what she wants to be.
Right.
In other words, I don't care what she wants to be.
Well, and when he brought it up, he was bringing it up because it is her being a political chameleon.
Right.
Being to play the identity politics card.
If he was more savvy and more of a politician, he would have done a better job of dissecting that and calling it what it was.
Right.
I don't understand why she talks Southern when she's in the South and why she doesn't when she's in the North. Right. I don't understand how she can identify as Indian American and then turn around and be black.
Yeah.
If she's got both, just say, what do I look like? What does it matter?
Or it doesn't. That's the thing.
It doesn't matter. Why do you have to identify as anything?
Right.
But that's our political climate because that's what they've wanted our political climate to be.
Exactly.
And so it's all a forced narrative. It's all something that is a fabrication of truth. Mm-hmm. And truth is, we're all the human race. Yeah. The truth is that God created all of us in his image. Mm-hmm. Instead, they want us to nitpick black, white. And, as well as I do, the Democrats were the party of the KKK.
Right.
They were the party of slavery.
Right.
They were the party, right? But somehow that history has gotten erased and rewritten. Mm-hmm. Magically has disappeared. And instead of, slavery and KKK, now it's bondage in the urban world, right? It's a different kind of segregation. It's a different kind of bondage. And they make it appear as if they're trying to help when really what they're trying to do is keep a people group in its place.
Yeah. The immutable characteristics are because it's always said it's the least interesting thing about people, but it's now they've made it into the most divisive thing about people.
Right.
And that it plays right into them because you can pit one group against the other. You can, this is Marxism. This
I was just getting ready to say if it wasn't such a boring read,
right,
we should read it on air because this is right out of the playbook.
Yeah.
This is nothing new. This is if you've read it and you understand it, you go, oh, well, okay. So if you can divide people based on color of skin, on race, and on wealth, class, right? You win.
Here's a big question for you, though. Do you think, just in the debate, that because we've looked at what's going on in places like Chicago. You've got Chicago Red and this group that's trying to flip Chicago.
Yeah.
Massive numbers of people are saying, nope, I'm going Trump. Nope, I'm going Trump. I'm not going to vote for Harris. Do you think that the numbers are actually big enough that the uninformed voter who sat down and listened to this debate, and this is the only impression that they're going to get of it because they're going to go back to living their lives after tonight?
I'm going to tell you, in this climate, I don't believe there's such a thing as an uninformed voter.
You think?
I think
I've come across some
I think
a small subsect of people.
I
so.
think for the most part, because this is such a political climate right now, it's so incredibly charged up, right? That I don't think there's as many undecideds and uninformed voters as there's been.
Yeah.
I think most people are pretty informed. And if they're not informed, most people are looking at their checkbook going, gosh,
Yeah.
I can't do this for another 4 years.
Well, that's why it was a valid point when he said, look, she's saying she's going to do this and she's going to
Right.
do that. She's been here for 3.5 years.
Yep.
Joe Biden has been in office as president. Yeah, she's just the vice president, which is limited in scope. But Joe Biden's technically not running things. So,
Yeah. Well, and neither is she.
right.
I mean,
right.
this is the other white elephant, right?
Yeah.
If this happens, she's not the president. She's
No.
not. She doesn't come up with her own talking points. She doesn't come up with her own ideas. She doesn't. Whatever she's going to do is going to be fed to her by somebody else.
Correct.
And I firmly believe right now it's probably Soros is a big part of it.
Yeah. I think it's the collection of
Yeah,
deep
that-
state, the lobbyist class, all those folks that
Yeah.
have got their
So-
talons in them.
So yeah, it's going to be more of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how much she tries to distance herself from Biden, and I do love the fact that he went right back to it.
Mm.
I wished he didn't, but because he went right back to it, that point gets erased.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I am not clearly I'm not Biden. Whatever. Biden did
Yeah.
yes, you are.
Yeah.
You're boss.
Yeah.
You're with him. You guys have destroyed the economy in 3.5 years. You took what was really great and just upended it.
Yep.
And you've got to, all he needed to say is, you've got to own this. You've got to own this. Can you own any of this? Or are you going to try to deflect everything back on me?
Yeah.
Even though when I was here, the record was totally different. Now all of a sudden you're going to try to spin this on like it's my fault.
Right. And this is they do it with the jobs claim, right?
Do it with everything.
With everything. It's that, we gained back all these jobs, or we created all these jobs, when it was just,
It's getting back.
yeah, it's just gained back. It's just the
And when that-
economy coming back around. After
And that
COVID.
what I don't understand why that headline wasn't bigger than it was when that came out, that they actually didn't create those jobs.
Right. Well, because where's the messaging coming from? The messaging is coming from
exactly.
the mainstream media, and the mainstream
Exactly.
media is going to play right into their playbook, into the Kamala Harris, Joe Biden playbook, not into the Donald Trump one. So they can't give him credit because he's the outsider.
Right.
And I think that we've still got 2 months left, roughly.
Yeah, and he needs to
50-something days.
he needs to agree 58, whatever it is.
Yeah.
He needs to push and agree and push harder for another debate.
Yeah.
I think the American people deserve it, because there was absolutely no content tonight. There was nothing given tonight that made you go, other than she's eloquent. Oh, she's soft spoken. Oh, she's, oh yeah, she looks very presidential. She has no substance.
No.
I'm gonna create 300 million new houses.
Because
How?
we have 3.5 years of her interviews, of her press briefings, and we have seen there's nothing there. It's a hollow facade
exactly
of a human
right.
being, and 2 weeks of memorization is what you get for tonight. But then after this, she goes back to
She's going back into hiding.
right.
Because here's the thing: there's going to be follow up from this, where people are, how are you going to create 300 million new houses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your plan?
How are we going to pay for $60,000 or $50,000 for
Startup for businesses.
startup for businesses? How are we going to pay for that?
And
Because
who gets that? Is that for migrants?
yeah, is that for an existing small business? Is that for one that comes within
Right.
the past, has been started in the past 3 years?
I mean, he should have. He should have drilled into that a little bit about how, if you're a migrant, you're guaranteed a loan without a job, without a history.
Yeah.
But because you're here illegally, they're going to give you money.
yeah.
What?
I think the migrant crisis is going to be, it's going to continue to be a bigger issue for folks. Junior, he made a comment and he said, these debates mean nothing. People have their minds made up already and they won't change.
I agree with him. I do.
Yeah.
I don't think one bit the needle is they're going to say it did. They're going to say she killed him. I don't think the needle is going to move much at all, because, listen, the last election, how many votes did he get? 76,
70
78 million, whatever it was,
yeah, it
right?
was
The
some
highest
number.
number of votes in the history of presidential elections. The highest number of votes.
Yeah.
And you know that none of those were fabricated because the powers that be are trying to keep him from being in office.
Exactly. So the fabrications went in one direction,
Yes.
not towards him. So yeah,
And so I think people's minds, number one, people's minds are made up because we're a little bit upset that that didn't work out last time.
right.
I don't trust our election. Do you?
No, I don't. No.
And so when he brings it up and they're going to talk about how he's an election denier and how he doesn't trust the electoral process, neither do most Americans at this point.
Yeah. Well, I still think that there could be a wave that's large enough to mask any voter fraud that actually takes place. But I still, it's just because I've been watching a ton of pre-debate footage leading up to the debate. The average kind of run-of-the-mill folks, if that's who they're capturing in these interviews, there are quite a few undecided folks out there. Now, there's surprising demographics like we've talked about when you look at Chicago and you look at like the black community. They are overwhelmingly saying and shocking a lot of people by saying, no, I'm voting Donald Trump. But I still think that, I don't know. I think that there is the potential for the voter turnout and the red wave of Donald Trump to mask any voter fraud. But I also think that they've had 4 years to lock in their systems. And so I am have some significant concerns about it.
Yes, agreed.
Makes sense.
I agree. And I will tell you this, I look for, there are going to be people at drop boxes waiting for repeat drop boxers. There are going to be people, and it's going to be, I don't want to say vigilante style, but very much I believe and look for people to be much more mindful of what is going on and who's doing what at this election than they were at the last one. You're not going to deny me as a Republican representative to be backstage while you're counting, right? Like they did. I mean, they did this. They said, "Oh, you can't come back here." Well, no, that's actually not okay. I'm supposed to be back here. And I think that there's going to be a lot more fallout from legal challenges after this election if he ends up, if we have 2.0 of the last time around, where now that the truth has come out, like in Georgia and other places, right? There's areas where it's like, okay, there was some tampering with stuff. Absolutely, there was a it's too late.
Well, Georgia had 200,000 that they testified about in which county was it? Wasn't Macon.
No, the other one, the big one.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's completely leaving me. But
County doesn't matter. It's Georgia.
yeah.
Nobody cares. It's Georgia, right? It's Bulldogs. So
well, yeah.
anyway, the point is that they come out with this now, 3.5 years later. It's too late. None of it matters, right? So, oh yeah, there was a mistake. Oh yeah, there was a bit of interference there.
But the messaging isn't even corrected because we've seen it in Georgia, we've seen it in Arizona, we've seen the people testifying in the state houses.
Yes.
And yet the media still tonight in the presidential debate is not willing to, there's no evidence of it. There's no evidence of it. That is the storyline that the average Americans are getting.
When there's absolute evidence of it.
There's absolute evidence. And people will still say, oh, it wasn't enough. And I listen to a lot of big commentators.
It wasn't enough.
Oh, it wasn't enough to change the election. Well, 200,000 votes is pretty substantial.
A. B, that's 200,000 votes they know about.
Especially in a place where he loses by 50,000.
Yeah, he would have won that.
Right.
And that's a big deal because he would have won the election.
Right.
Right?
Shift a state and Georgia
and you've got it.
And you've got it.
So you sit back and go, okay, wait a minute. Like that's a big deal. And even if you say it's insignificant, that's what we know about what's been testified about, what they've discovered, right? 3.5 years in, that he was sitting here saying there's fraud here. There's fraud. This isn't right.
Right.
And you know what stinks? They are so arrogant and full of themselves, they can't even admit that he was right.
Right.
But he was right.
And it's just that they dislike him so much.
Yes.
That's the thing
they can't stand him.
Right.
And so even though he makes the point, there was fraud in this election. No, there wasn't. No, there wasn't. It was the safest and securest election we've ever had until you start to unwrap it and then go, yeah, there actually was fraud.
Yeah.
But that's on page 6. It no longer matters. Biden's been in office 3.5 years. And, it's almost like in America, sadly, we don't get a do-over. We don't get a mulligan here.
Yeah, and I think that this is an election where we definitely don't get a mulligan after this one.
No,
If we keep going on the same trajectory, I mean, we're talking about
we're done.
that's it. I mean, the printing is going to continue. You know, I don't know if you heard Thomas Massey today. He was talking in Congress about the so this latest government spending bill and attaching the SAVE Act to it, which is the one for the Safe Voter Act, basically trying to require voter ID and all that.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to play, I'm going to butcher it. And he did such a good job. I'm not going to be an actor in this play or a thespian in this play of government irresponsibility or whatever it is anymore, because the spending is going to continue. There's nobody holding their feet to the fire.
Right.
And that's essentially the plan and all this that's coming from the office of the president and the massive amount of power that they've accumulated because of executive action. They will spend us into oblivion. They will spend
But that's
us
part of the plan.
into economic collapse, right?
Yep.
Because every time you have a collapse, this is why generating and fabricating emergency situations and crises across the country is so valuable. Look at COVID, a COVID crisis, and I forget who it was. Is it the Hegelian dialect? Is that right? Where you basically create a crisis that you need to have a solution to,
Yes.
and when you have that crisis, that
you come to the
solution,
rescue.
you nab some more power,
Yep.
and it slowly repeats itself over the years.
Yeah. Did you see? And I mean, obviously, this is a special episode for the debate. But there are a few things that I came across this week that I was kind of like, huh. And Bill Gates is talking about the next round already.
Right.
And you sit back and go, son of a gun, stay out of our business.
Yeah.
Right? Stay out of our business.
Yeah.
And, the government, I love the abortion stance that Trump took tonight was a very powerful statement. And she keeps going back to women's rights. She keeps going back to all this stuff. But the point is this, the power belongs to the people, not the federal government.
Right.
And the more you get away, and he's trying to be a dictator. I've never seen a dictator give away so much.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
I've never seen a dictator empower so many people
And take it away from the federal government and give
and
it
try to take it right. He is a dictator.
Yeah.
You're right. He is a dictator to the federal government.
Right. That's
They
exactly.
hate
right.
him
Yeah.
because he's trying to abolish every part of it that he can, because he believes in this country to a point where he's willing to actually take a bullet on stage, right? He believes in it so much that he's willing to do things. And listen, I've said it on this show before. I am not a huge Trump supporter. I wish that they would have cut his thumbs off so he couldn't tweet. I look at his appearance tonight. I listen to the way he talks tonight, and there's nothing about him that says that's my president to me. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not somebody that's totally in the tank on him. However, his policies, what he believes about me and about my family, the fact that he'll come from behind the bulletproof glass to check on a woman in the audience in Asheville, North Carolina, says that to me said everything you need to know about him is the fact that he would stop his whole thing and go check on this woman. They wouldn't do that.
No.
But he's willing to put himself in harm's way.
Yeah.
And he really believes, that image of him standing there with his fist saying, fight, fight, fight. He knows and understands the severity of the situation. He understands that the entire establishment is against him. He is the rebel.
Mm-hmm.
He's the rebel.
Yeah. And there is no question how much he does love this country.
No, there's no
Zero
question
about it.
And I will take that over somebody that's trying to line their own pockets any day of the week.
Yeah.
And the fact that people like Elon Musk, RFK Jr., right?
Yeah.
These people are lining up behind him going, I'm not gaining anything by doing this.
No, you lose by
Right.
You give up something by backing Trump,
Right.
especially if you're in the political realm, and people are saying it's worth it because they can see,
They can
understand.
see this is it.
Yeah.
If this doesn't pan out, we will never be able to go back. You want your baseball and apple pie?
Yeah.
You want your you want your Saturday afternoon football? You want your it's never going to be the same as it was. And it might not actually be able to go back at this point. We might be too far gone.
Well, and that's the line that's been used so much, and it's been overused to the point that I think there are some people out there that I hope will take heed, because it's been said before, it's been said over and over again. $34 trillion in debt and climbing. We have exceeded our GDP. You tax 100% of all the money coming in. The government takes 100% of it.
And we still don't
We still haven't paid off our debt.
Yeah.
And, this is bad. This is really,
It is.
really bad. And if
And
we
I
don't start
will ask
drilling
you-
and paying money down, and
I will ask you this though. He contributed to that. Trump did.
he did during COVID. Yeah.
And so you sit back and go, okay, he understands you got to pay it back. A country can't file bankruptcy. I mean, in a sense, you can,
Technically can, yeah.
but you can't.
If America, well, that's the thing, is they're relying on this modern monetary theory, saying, well, we can never go broke. We'll just print more money. Well, that's
That's the opposite of what you should be doing,
Right.
in a sense, right?
Right.
So we're in a really odd position now, because if we go forward the way we've been going forward, there is no turning back.
Yeah.
And because a little shout out to our liberal friends. I know you got big hearts, and I know you care about people. But I will tell you, as somebody who's managed places and everything else, your concern and compassion for people can't outweigh staying in business.
Yeah.
You've got to make hard decisions. I'm late because my son had to be dropped off at school. I'm late because, eventually you can't be late again or you're fired.
Yeah.
Well, my mom was sick. I'm sorry to hear that, but I've got to let you go.
Right.
Because you're costing me money.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, but because we've accepted, a lot of people, even people on the right, have accepted some of the collective. When you talk about where Social Security is, you talk about Obamacare, and you talk, they've come to rely on all of these things. And those are things that have gotten us away from the individual and from personal responsibility, and have gotten us in some form of reliance on the federal government. And that's how they hook their claw into people.
You have hit it on the head.
Yep.
So we need a nation that's full of people with personal responsibility.
Yeah. Individual personal response. That's what the military always talked about.
Consequences for your actions. I don't think are they still talking about that today? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it's changed now.
It's probably changed a bit, but
there's a consequence for your actions, and you're responsible for what you decide.
Yeah.
Right. And so at this point, I don't know, anybody got any questions or comments about tonight's debate?
Junior's hit us with a lot of comments tonight. Junior, thanks for being involved in the conversation.
I like
anybody
you, Junior.
If anybody out there has, he did. He said beta males don't get Trump, but alphas totally get him. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I'll give you.
I'll give him a thumb up for that. Yeah.
But and for everybody that was on, we had quite a few folks on. We still do. We got about 20 some odd folks. I'm not sure which platforms everybody is on, because we're on a lot of different ones. But make sure that you give us a subscribe. Make sure that you give us thumbs up.
Like and share.
Go to Braver Than the Rest on all the social media platforms, YouTube and Rumble. Go to Continue Freedom on YouTube and Rumble. Hit us with a like. Hit us with a comment. And we appreciate you guys hanging in all this time.
This was a lot of fun tonight, actually.
this was great,
I kind of wanted to be more Mystery Science Theater on it, and interrupt more and all that stuff. But her facial expressions during it were nothing short of disgusting. And, the content that she delivered through her compassion was zero, in my opinion. And I know right now on every media platform, save Fox and probably Newsmax, they're heralding her as the next Obama. Yeah. She's going to be fantastic. Listen to her. But nobody is going to talk about the substance which she delivered tonight, because there was none.
The comparison I made to her, this is what I said in one of my last videos, was that she's gonna be pitched as the reincarnation of Alexander the Great if he transitioned.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah,
I think that's
if he
what we're gonna get.
transitioned and became Indian or black
or whatever,
or Hispanic or whatever she is today. Yeah. Which doesn't matter. I love that answer. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care.
I don't care. She could be whatever she wants to.
Right. Which is how most of us feel, isn't it?
It's exactly how we feel.
Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Why are you making me?
We wanted people to stop making it an issue, and he says, "Well, she said she was this." She said, and then that becomes a.
It becomes an. Oh yeah, and of course her response has to be so heartfelt.
Right.
We're better than this.
We're so better than this.
We're
Even
better
though I've
than
been saying this for
Anyway, thank you for tuning in tonight. We are on. You're mostly Continue Freedom is on pretty much daily, almost.
Yeah, almost. So I'm trying to do 3 or 4 days a week. I'm doing some shorter videos, some longer videos.
Yeah.
A little bit.
And I will say this about Continue Freedom and Jared is that I have never met in my life somebody that is more well informed on. He is a researcher of researchers. And,
I appreciate that.
Spends a lot of time and knows his stuff, and I appreciate it. When we're together on Braver Than the Rest, I'm kind of the drunk uncle in the family that just has a lot of fun.
Right.
And I have some good points too every now and then. But yeah, we appreciate you tuning in tonight. And remember, no matter who you vote for, no matter who becomes the next president of the United States, Jesus is still on the throne. And that's what matters more than anything. So we do encourage you tonight, don't lose heart no matter what. No matter whose team you're on, no matter which side you're batting for. I shouldn't even bring that up, which side you're batting for, because that's, who cares?
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
Jesus is still on the throne, and he is the answer to the problems. He is the answer to the problems this nation faces. He's also the answer to the problems that you're facing in your current life, which for all of us, there's lots of problems. And if you vote for a Democrat, they're only going to get worse. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Junior, thanks for all your comments, buddy. We appreciate it. Like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and, for Braver Than the Rest, you can email us at thebraverthantheRest@gmail.com. And for Continued Freedom,
just hit me in the comments.
Hit him in the comments.
DM me, whatever.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you all.
All right, guys.